do that. I enjoy coming here. I like being able to preach as often as I can. And so it worked out. I didn't have any goals. I was able to come back and be with you guys. There's a lot of people in the Bible, a lot of men, a lot of women in the Bible that I find fascinating. I mean, when you think about the stories of Scripture and really look at them, you think of some of the people that you like, that you find fascinating in the Bible. My ultimate one is Paul. He's the guy I want to fist bump when I get to heaven. And I just do. I think this guy, I'm amazed at his writings and the things that he did and how he transformed from who he was to what he was. And then there's women like Esther and Phoebe and then usually just Ruth, and you can go on and on and on about some of these men and women of the Bible that fascinate us. One of the guys that fascinates me a lot is this guy named Joshua. Here's a guy who he was with Moses, and all these things went on, and you read about his story, and you read through the book of Joshua, and it's just, I'm amazed at some of the things that went on. He was a remarkable man. He grew up with first-hand knowledge, first-hand experience of the deliverance of the Israelites out of Egypt. This is who he was. He had experienced the miracles. He had just put his whole faith in who God was. This is the guy, you remember? He was one of the 12 that Moses said, hey, you guys, 12 guys, you guys go over and you spy on the land, and you come back and you tell me how it was. Remember, who was the other guy that came back with a positive report? What was his name? Caleb. So Joshua and Caleb came back and said, we got this, guys. We can do it. We got it. But the majority rule that day was, no, we're scared. And these guys, we're like wrestlers. These guys are huge. We're not going to go up against them. But not Joshua. Joshua had the faith. Joshua came back and said, we have got this. Let's go and seize the promised land. So, because of the majority rule that day, Joshua he had to experience 40 years of wandering in the desert. Yet through all of that, he kept his faith in God. There were times when you read about Joshua, when you read through the stories, Joshua failed to to ask God how this was going to go. And he went up against Ai, and Ai, thumped him, man. They really gave him a hard battle. But then he went back, and then he waited on God, and God said, I'm going to do it. And they went back, and they just beat up on Ai. So you read these stories. So was he a perfect man? No. But he had a faith in God that was just unmovable. He had to, when Moses said, hey, Joshua, you know what? You're going to be now the leader, and I'm going to fade off into the sunset, like good leaders do. We just fade off into the sunset. Moses faded off. Joshua became the leader. Joshua had to lead his men into and the tribes into the promised land, fighting their way to do it. They would come to cities, and God would say, take them out. Take them all out. Now, remember the stories? Think about the story that, what was the big one that Joshua was involved in? Man, what was that one? What was it? What? Jericho. And we all sing, Joshua took the battle of Jericho. Remember that? You guys know those songs. So these are great stories to listen to and to read and to teach our kids to understand who this guy was. He never doubted the promise of God that the people of Israel would inherit the promised land. Chapter 9, you go in there and you look at chapter 9. Chapter 9, Joshua, in chapter 9, we find the story of how the Gibeonites, they were scared, and so they came over, if you read the story, they put on sackcloth, they took wine and put it in old wine sacks, so they looked like they were like poor, desperate people, and they they came to Joshua and said, we are just we can't do this. That's my own words. We can't do this. Would you send a treaty with us and protect us? And what did the Israelites do? Absolutely, we'll protect you. But then, the deception was figured out. And they went to him and they said, hey, why did you guys deceive us? They give them that old, whiny little story. And so the people of Israel gets really angry. They're like, how come the leaders won't do anything to these guys? And so the leaders would not attack Gibeon. They said, no, and they were men of their word. They had sworn an oath to Gibeon that they were not going to destroy Gibeon. And so they didn't. So the people were angry at them. So Joshua has to get involved. You know, Joshua, in his good wisdom, he comes up and he says, all right, why did you do this? And they told him, he said, from now on you're going to be cursed. And you will be wood carriers and water bearers for God's house. So ultimately, they didn't kill them, but the Gibeonites ended up having to be servants of Israel. And then in chapter 10, you read about the 5 Amorite armies who the kings got together and said, boy, these Gibeonites, man, they got some power. And now that they're friends with Israel, there is no telling what they're going to be able to do this. So we're going to preempt that. We're going to do a preemptive strike, right? We know military, we know preemptive strikes. We're going to do a preemptive strike on Gibeon. We're going to take them out. Well, so they decided they were going to do that, right? So the 5 kings, the Amorites, they all got together and they marched upon Gibeon and they laid besiege to Gibeon. And Gibeon was getting thumped. I mean, they were like, this was not like Gibeon was a strong army. But they were getting thumped by the Amorites. So they sent word, they sent a courier back to Israel, to Joshua, and said, oh, would you please come help us? You know, don't let your servants be destroyed. And Joshua said, I got you. I got you covered in what we're going to do. Let's look at Joshua chapter 10. That's where we're going to pick up at. This story, I mean, there's some amazing stories in Scripture, right? You know the story of the donkey donkey? Right? I love that, man. I mean, where else do you read stuff about a donkey that talks, right? Out of Scripture. So here's another one of those stories that you're like, holy cow, how did this happen? So listen to this. This is out of chapter 10. We're going to pick up at verse 6, and we'll read through verse 15. And this is kind of interesting, but let me pray for some more. God, it is so, I think, fun and interesting, God, and just fascination surrounds this scripture from Joshua, how that you led them and how through an audacious prayer things begin to happen. And God, we know that we have that same connection with you. We have the Spirit of God living in us as Christians. And God, we have the Son of God as our mediator. We have to go to you and know that we can pray these kind of prayers. And God, know that you hear us. So God, help us as we look through the scripture today to understand what we as believers in Jesus' name. Amen. So Joshua chapter 10, beginning at verse 6, reading through 15, it says this. Then the men of Gibeon sent word to Joshua in the camp of Gilgal. Don't abandon your servants. Come quickly and save us. Help us, for all the Amorite kings living in the hill country have joined forces against us. So Joshua and his whole military force, including all the fighting men, came from Gilgal. The Lord said to Joshua, I love this. Yeah. The Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid of them, for I have handed them over to you. Not one of them will be able to stand against you. So Joshua caught them by surprise, after marching all night from Gilgal. The Lord threw them into confusion before Israel. He defeated them in a great slaughter at Gibeon, chased them through the ascent of Beth Horon, and struck them down as far as Azekah and Makkedah. As they fled before Israel, the Lord threw large hailstones on them from the sky along the descent from Beth Horon all the way to Azekah, and they died. More of them died from the hail than the Israelites killed with the sword. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to the Israelites, Joshua spoke to the Lord in the presence of Israel. Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon over the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped until the nation took vengeance on its enemies. Isn't this written in the book of Jashar? So the sun stopped in the middle of the day and delayed its setting almost a full day. There has been no day like it before or since, when the Lord listened to the voice of a man, because the Lord fought for Israel. Then Joshua and all Israel with him returned to the camp at Gilgal. I mean, just reading that scripture, don't you just go, wow. I mean, it's like, boom, see what happened here? You see the stuff that's going on? Joshua, being a man of integrity, I mean, that's who he was. He set out for Gibeon with his army. Now, it says Joshua led his army on an all-night march. It's about 25 miles is the way he had to go. And so this is about like, if you were to go outside, we got up today and we just knew we had to do something in Wamego, and God said, take your church and go to Wamego. We'd walk out those doors and we would walk to Wamego. That's 25 miles almost. It's like 24, somewhere in there, right here. So right up 25 miles, and that's what he did. He took a 25-mile road march towards the enemy's camp. Now he did it under the darkness, and so, so you got to think about this. Here's the soldiers. They've been going all day long doing their things. Joshua comes to them and says, guys, buckle up, let's go. And so they're going to go all night long through a force march at night. Now, soldiers know what force marches are. Many of us have done 12-mile force marches or so. Especially if you've done things like IFMB or air assault or EIB, the expert infantryman's badge or the expert field medical badge. You have to do a 12-mile road march, and you have to do it with all your battle rattle, and you do it in 3 hours or less. And that's pretty tough. To do 12 miles in 3 hours or less. You're really smoked. You know what I mean? One time I had an opportunity to lead a team on a 25-mile force march through the sands of White Sands, New Mexico. It's an annual event in White Sands, New Mexico. It's a memorial to the New Mexico National Guard, who most of the men that was in that unit died in the Bataan Death March. My uncle was one of them. He was from New Mexico. He was a National Guardsman in the cavalry unit there. He was sent to Bataan to fight the Japanese. He was captured in Bataan. He and some of the men escaped from the death march, swam to Corregidor, were captured in Corregidor again, put back into the death march. He survived the trip to Japan from there in the ships, in the hull of the ships, and died in a concentration camp in Japan. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to go do this road march. And I took a team. There was 5 of us. And with a 40-pound rock and in full uniform and Kevlars, and we did this march 25. And there was times where you were marching in sand up over your ankles. And I remember getting done. It took us 7.5 hours, and we were in shape. We had trained for this thing. But at the end of 7.5 hours, there was no way I could have gone to battle. If I had to lift a weapon up and fire it, much less a sword or a bow and arrow or something like that, it would have been almost impossible. My knees hurt so bad, all I wanted to do was sit down. It took me a month to recover from this thing. And so I'm thinking of these guys. They do a 25-mile force march after working all day, going that night, staying up all night. Not only do they do that, they get there. They don't have time to rest. They immediately go into battle. Immediately begin the fight. I don't think I could have done it. This is the kind of distance. If we were walking here to Wamego, it would take us on a leisurely walk, probably 2-3 days to go 25 miles. And that's a good distance. But they covered it in one night. In one night. And it says that the army advanced. God told Joshua, do not be afraid. And this is so important. He said, because he has handed the enemy over to Joshua. Joshua hadn't even gotten there. And God tells Joshua, hey, don't be afraid, because you're going to win the battle. I'm going to hand them over to you. They're yours. So what was the outcome of this all-night road march? The Israelite took the enemy completely by surprise. They were completely surprised with it. The Lord throws the enemy in complete disarray and confusion. The enemy lines broke, and the Amorites started to what? Run. They sat in retreat, and these dudes were running, and they were getting out of there. But then listen to what verse 11. We see that God began to do more. He says, as they fled from Israel, the Lord threw large hailstones at them from the sky, killing them. And I don't think it was like, elf throwing snowballs. I don't think it was that. I think that God had the hailstones coming down so hard on these guys, it was killing them. You ever been caught in a hailstorm? I've been on a lake before, and a hailstorm came up and hit us, and you're putting like seat cushions over your head because it hurts so bad. These guys are having hailstorms, and it says it killed more of them, the hailstones killed more of them than the sword did. It's just an amazing thing to me. So as the sun was setting, Joshua knew that his time was up. Man, it comes dark in the evening. They didn't have NVGs, night vision goggles back then. They couldn't tell where these guys were hiding now. They knew that. So Joshua, as the evening came, he knew something was up, and so it was going to get dark, and the enemy would begin to slip away. And so maybe just Joshua thought that if anything less than taking out this army completely would not glorify God. God says, you got them. I got this. So Joshua began to pray. And he asked God to intervene. Now listen to this. This is an outrageous prayer. Listen to this. Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon over the valley of Ajalon. Now, we got to note here, Scripture says this wasn't a private prayer. You know, Joshua didn't go behind a rock and say, oh God, we need your intervention here. He didn't go inside of a tent that was set up for a leader to sit inside there and warm his body or do whatever he had to do. It wasn't that. It says that he did it in front of Israel. So this is my vision. You've got the army out here. And he's out there and he's a leader. Joshua's a leader. You know, and so in the middle of this, in front of the army, he begins to pray and he says, sun, stand still. And what happened? So if you think that was an audacious prayer, get ready. Find out what God does here. Listen, I mean, let's get into this. I want to get 3 points on this. Again, I love those stories. And so let's look at 3 points. Number one, dare to say God-sized prayers. Just try it. Dare to say God-sized prayer. Joshua had this audacity to ask God for something that was never been done before. This was something that just wasn't miraculous. It was something that was unbelievable. It was an unprecedented. Who even gave this guy the idea? How do you think about that? How do you think about it? You're in a battle, and the battle is raging. How do you think, hey God, would you stop the sun right where it is for just a little bit for me? I mean, Joshua is just a unique guy. But you see, here's the deal. Faith knows no limits. Right? Would you agree? True faith knows no limits. You know, faith knows no limits because with God, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. Joshua believed in a big God. Do you? I mean, have you ever asked God for the impossible? Does your unbelief limit what God can do for you? In other words, do you believe God for only the achievable, the believable? You know, kind of the decent prayers, you know, that we have out there. Is that what you believe, God? Do you believe, do you pray a prayer hoping and not really sure God is going to meet your needs and take care of that prayer? I would say I've done that. You know? God, would you do this? God, this is something. And then I go, do my own way and say, well, I'll just take care of myself. Because I'm not sure God's going to help. But that's what we do. I want to think about some other people with me. Think about Peter. You know, Peter's in a boat, right? They've been in a boat for a long time. Out of the waters, right? The waters are raging and raging and raging. And what do? They look up and they see who? Jesus walking on the water. Did Peter go, hey, Jesus, can I hand you a hand down here and help you up in the boat? No, what did he say? Hey, Jesus, can I come out there too? And he did. He did. He walked on water. Acts chapter 3, Peter saw a man crippled at birth and sitting on the side of the road. Remember, he was begging. And Peter, what did he say to him? He said, I don't have any gold or any silver, but what I do have I'll give to you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, get up and walk. And he did. See, yeah, these are like big time prayers. These are like, I serve a God who can do this. I serve a big God. James tells us that Elisha was a man just like us. Just like us. Put his pants on. Maybe they're on a road or whatever they were. Just like we did. You know? He prayed earnestly that it wouldn't rain for 3.5 years. Remember the story? 3.5 years it didn't rain. 3.5 years. And then in verse 18 of James chapter 5 it says, again, Elijah cried, and the heavens gave rain, and the earth produced its crops. You see, we are just like these people. See, I said earlier that prayer is the arena where our faith meets God's abilities. Prayer is the arena where our faith meets God's abilities. We can pray prayers worthy of the God we're praying to. Jeremiah chapter 32, 26 and 27 says this. Then the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah. I am the Lord, the God of all mankind. Is anything too hard for me? Folks, we worship the same God. God that Peter, Elijah, Jeremiah, Paul, all of it, we worship the same God. The only difference is Joshua, Peter, and Elijah had the audacity to pray prayers that lived up to God's mighty and powerful work in His glory. A few years back, I received a book from Max Lucado. And I know Max Lucado's not a Southern Baptist, and I understand that. That's okay. He wrote a good book. It's called Facing Your Giants. And so, in this book, Max talks about that David faced his giant. And that we need to face our giants. We need to face them. We need to do so by going beyond timid prayers. To just pray these audacious prayers. Could it be that we're not seeing much of God's greatness because we have been praying timid prayers? Could that be it? I'm thinking maybe. I mean, we've not been asking more than just the natural kind of prayers. What if we tried a different tactic? What if we rushed our giants with God-sized prayers, asking for the impossible? What if we rushed him and said, giant of divorce, giant of financial issues, you are not entering my home today? What if that's the way we pray? Let's go beyond the timid kind of prayers. Giving thanks for food, asking God for good weather. And I understand as farmers you need good weather, I do. And these are good, and we need to be healed from flu. And they'll say, these are all good prayers. They are. They're very good prayers. We need to do that. But what if we went beyond that and started asking for the impossible? Giants lurk in our neighborhoods. Think about it with me. Giants such as alcohol, bigotry, child abuse, pornography, insecurity. You know what? We can pray and say, you are going down in the name of Jesus. We've just got to be able to pray some audacious prayers. And ask God to get us through. How long has it been since you loaded your sling and took a shot at your giants? How long has it been? Why not load your sling with a God-sized prayer and let it go? You see, when we focus on the giants, we stumble. When we focus on prayer, our giants stumble. When that happens, everybody will know it was God who did it. And it will. There's no doubt about it. So we need God-sized prayers. Next, we need to cling on to God's promises. So why was Joshua so bold? He's a pretty bold guy. When you read the stories of him. You know why? Because he knew God. He knew God. He knew God's will. I mean, during the march, as they were heading to Gibeon, God spoke to Joshua and gave him a promise, do not be afraid of them. I've handed them over to you. Not one of them will be able to stand against you. Do you hear that? Not one of them will be able to stand against you. So Joshua believed what God had promised. It was God's will to defeat the enemy. And Joshua wanted to see God's purpose fulfilled. It's been said, God listens to the voice of the man who himself has listened to the voice of God. Joshua knows enough to make a big ass. He saw all the miracles when they left Egypt. I mean, think about what he saw. He saw the Israelites being freed from slavery. He saw God drop food from the sky for 40 years to feed the Israelites. He saw the Lord produce water from a rock. So he had no doubt what God could do. He had the faith to see it. His faith in God came through knowing God. And to know God, we need to hear God. Well, how do we hear God? Romans 10:17 says, so faith comes from what is heard, and what is heard comes through the message about Christ. How do we hear? We hear from the message of Christ. Spend our time in Scripture and read. That's where we need to focus at. If you want your faith to grow and want to know Him more, to know Him, we need to learn Him more. We need to hear from Him more. And we do that through Scripture. So we need to say God-sized prayers. We need to cling on to God's promises. And last, don't stand in hope, but walk in faith. We can pray and we can stand and hope. In other words, we're not doing anything. We're just going to pray and hope that God will take care of whatever it is that we're asking Him to do. And my friend, that is passive faith. That is passive faith. James calls it dead faith. Faith without works is dead. James 2:26. It's useless. Listen, I need to show my faith by what I do. We need to walk in faith. To move out. To do something to claim our kingdom. You know, Western Kansas, some years ago, there was a story about a town in Western Kansas and Western Kansas had been going through a drought. You know, the aquifers out there were getting very low, and they hadn't had rain. The wheat crops were struggling. Everything was going bad out there. And so finally, after weeks of drought, the pastors of the town called for a citywide prayer vigil. And you know, most of the small towns, you go out, they've got a little square area. And so we're going to meet down here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday afternoon after everybody goes home to church, have your meal, and come back, and we're going to get together as a community. We're going to pray for rain. You know what was interesting? All the people in the community came to that square to pray for rain, but it was one young boy who brought an umbrella. True story. That young boy said, if I'm going to pray for rain, I'm going to bring an umbrella because I believe God's going to let it rain. That's the way we need to be. We need to have faith. See, it's amazing to see the extent of the human effort involved in the battle. I mean, even though God was with the Israelites, they still had to do their job. Right? I mean, they still had to do it. God had given them a promise of victory and was personally involved in the battle. I mean, He was raining hailstones down on the people, right? But it didn't free the army up from being personally involved. They still had to fight. Even it said that hell killed more than the sword killed for them. So they had to be committed to the fight. They had to fight the war. They had to sweat it out. They had just walked 25 miles, and it wasn't a slow march. This was a forced march that they had to be done. So they had to pay the price to win the victory. So we need to fight our battles on our knees. That's what we need to do. We need to fight the problems that we have, that we bring upon ourselves. A major disappointment, a financial battle, a sudden illness, a rebellious child. We need to bathe those problems in prayer and then walk in faith in Christ. Success doesn't come easy. Even with God's presence and promise, it doesn't come easy. God wants us to be fully committed. Get rid of the acronym fraud. Yeah. Fraud. Fully rely on God. That's what we need to do. Fully rely on God. Show your faith by what you do. Show your faith by what you do. Be fiercely loyal to one spouse. Love your children with time. Honor your mom and dad. Pursue humility. Love the unlovable. Keep your promises that you make. God's given us His promise. God says He will be with us. God will fight the battle for us. But we need to do our part in the fight. We need to put our hard work and effort into everything we do. We need to walk by faith and stop standing in hope. You see, the lesson we learned from Joshua chapter 10 is that we serve a God who can transform. A God who can transform the most diverse situations that we face into opportunities to display His grace in our lives. And I know there's people here who've gone through significant issues in their lives. I can't imagine what we've gone through to go through some of the things that I know in this church people have done and other people that attend here have gone through. I couldn't imagine going through that. But the ones that I know that did that spent a lot of time on their knees seeking God and saying, God, get me through. do my part. God, I trust you to do yours. One author wrote this the following. He says this: it's human nature to want to skip straight from the promise to the payoff. Who doesn't want to get right to the good stuff? But the process is invaluable. The process is a time of strengthening. The process is a place where you lay down your pride and learn to rely totally on God. Most importantly, the process is the way we grow to know God, and that's really the whole point. One of my major irritations is when somebody spoils the plot of the movie. You know? I mean, it really is. Because you don't want them to tell you that the dude gets the girl, right? You know, or that this team's going to win the championship. Terry just watched Harriet the other night. It's a really good movie. I don't know how factual it was. I don't know. I didn't come back research. I really love that movie. And the suspense was there. You didn't know what was going to happen. I would have hated it. Somebody came and said, "Oh yeah, you know what? This is what's going to happen." That would have killed me. It would have been good. See, I wanted to know the outcome, but I also need to watch the plot. And otherwise, if I just wanted to know the outcome, I would have just gone to the internet and said, "Hey, what's the ending of this story? How did she make out? You know, what happened to her?" See, when you do this, you want to feel the tension. You want to feel the suspense. It's what helps you in those movies as you're going through. And you might wonder whether or not the good guy wins or the relationship works out. I mean, that's what kind of gets you going. See, that's the plot. And the plot is the point to the movie. What if the same dynamic that makes the plot the point of the movie applies to your relationship with God? You want to work through it. You want to develop that relationship. We know what the end of the story is, right? Right, no. But what about that? Well, what's the dash in your life? What's the dash? You see, it's possible that the process isn't just a time waster or a commercial break. Have you ever considered that in the overall scheme of God's design, the process is important? We're growing. It's called sanctification. That's what we're doing. By the time you're saved, the time of glorification, there's this process called sanctification. And those are great words, by the way. So young people, remember those words. Justification, glorification, or sanctification, glorification. Churches forgot. Very important. You know? And so sanctification is important. It's that process that we go through as we become more like little Christ in our life. If all God wanted to do was give us a happy ending, He would accept Christ and He would, and you'd have been like a little puff of smoke. And you'd have been carried away to heaven, right? I mean, that's all God wanted to happen. But He has more for us. He has a different plan for our lives. And we need to trust Him that He's going to be in battle with us, and He's going to take care of us just as He was with Joshua. So you want to learn to walk by faith and not by sight. And you can't learn that without walking through periods of darkness, because it happens in the whole life. The apprehension and gut-level fear that you feel in those stages may make you turn and pursue something different. Or you can opt for something better. You can embrace the process with audacious faith and go at it, because every big dream has small beginnings. Between the promise and the payoff, there's the dash. It's the process. And that process is the breeding ground for faith. That process has the potential to draw you closer to Jesus than you've ever been before. The process is the point. So pray God-sized prayers, because God's more than capable of hearing the prayers and acting on them. Cling to His will of what He's promised you, because He has promised you that God does not go back on His promise. And move on in faith. God will always be there for you. Scripture says that He will never leave us nor forsake us. We just have to put our faith in His word. Father, thank you.